If you're interested in running a coaching business in around 20 hours a week, stay tuned. I'm going to share a bit of a behind the scenes look at my own business and how I have everything set up and structured so that I get to run my business in around 20 hours a week. Let's dive in. Hi there, welcome to the Wholehearted Business Show. I'm Laura. I help health and life coaches get more clients, grow their businesses and live the best lives while they do it. And today on the show, I'm sharing a bit of a kind of behind the scenes look at how I run my business in around 20 hours a week. So I'm going to talk a bit more about what 20 hours a week actually is. It's not exactly 20 hours a week. It's sometimes a bit more, sometimes a bit less. And the things that I have in place that allow me to do what I do, but also like a really honest look at how I'm restricted by that as well. So I'm going to just share a very basic behind the scenes look, talking all about the things that I've got in place, the things that I find really help me, so that if you want to run your coaching business in around the same amount of time, maybe you get some ideas, some inspiration about how you can do that too. And I also just want to say a bit of a disclaimer before I go any further. I think it's really important to note that my situation is going to look very different from other people's situations. This is my personal kind of behind the scenes account of it. Rather than me giving you advice, I'm just sharing my own way of doing it so that it might inspire you or give you ideas. Obviously, I've got my particular access to resources, my particular set of privileges, all of that kind of stuff that comes into what this looks like for me, and it's going to be different for everyone. And also, just to add to that as well, I am neurotypical as far as I'm aware. That's another thing that could impact people in terms of working less, as if you are neurodiverse, that could have a different kind of set of impact. So just want to be fully aware of those things before we go any further. Like I say, this is just my own personal kind of experience of this. So I started my business as a health coach back in 2012. At the time I was working in a full-time job, and then in 2014 I had my little boy Finley, and always pretty much since the start my business has always been not the only thing that I had going on. So I've always had to run it alongside a job or having a very small child who grew up, and then I had another small child. So it's always been something that's had to be run around those things, and because that's the way that I've wanted to run it as well. That was always my choice, and that was always one of the reasons that I wanted to do something like this, was because I wanted to have that freedom to run a business and make money and do that around my children primarily. That was one of my main drivers when I wanted to start this business. So it's always been something that's been there. It's always been the way that it's been. And I think that's probably quite helpful, because I haven't had to go from, having all the hours available to me to work on the business to kind of cutting that back. I've kind of always been making it work in, like I say, roughly 20-ish hours a week. And again, that varies sometimes greatly across the months, weeks, years. But I'm going to try and explain a little bit about the things that help me get stuff done. And like I say, the restrictions as well, because there are things that I don't get done, and that does impact the results that I get in my business. And I think it's really important to acknowledge that. So like I say, it's not exactly 20 hours. I think it tends to be a little bit more, a little bit less, just depending on the week and what I've got going on. So what happens in my life, what I've got going on is basically I've got my son Finley, who's 9. I've got my daughter Freya, who's 4. Finley goes to school, Freya goes to nursery, and they are in school and nursery similar hours, so 9 till 3 roughly. So that kind of gives me a chunk of time each day, 9 till 3. I used to have Fridays off with Freya. Now she goes into nursery on Fridays as well. So I've got 9 till 3. She's also with my mum on a Tuesday, so she's not in full-time nursery, but she has my mum, helps me out with childcare on a Tuesday. So basically I've got kind of 9 till 3 each day available. I also try, if I can, to not work on Fridays. So I try and take Fridays off, and I say off, usually I'm kind of doing random things. I might do a little bit of work here and there, but I've always wanted just to have that bit of flexibility in my week so that I'm not kind of stuffed with everything in there. So that's kind of where the roughly 20 hours a week thing comes from. I also don't tend to work a lot over the school holidays either. So I tend to, most of the time, either completely take it off, or I might work a little bit in the evenings and maybe have one day during that week when I'm working. So it just depends on the actual holidays. If it's 1 week off, then I'll just take the full week off. If it's 2 over Easter, I might try and work a couple of days in there and get a little bit of childcare here and there. And if it's the summer, then that is different. I might take a couple of weeks off in the summer, but then have a few days of childcare here and there as well. So it's very flexible, which again is, really what I wanted out of the business in terms of that, which is amazing. So that's kind of what it looks like for me. That's the way that I want it to run. And I also want to have some spaciousness, because one of the things that feels really, really good to me, I hate feeling rushed. I hate feeling like my time is really compressed. I like time to myself. I've had to really consciously structure how I do things in the business to still, work around 20 hours a week and still feel that spaciousness, because I think it would be very easy to feel like I'm just, 9 o'clock straight back, bush, like just doing loads and loads and loads of things. And then, kind of leaving the house at 3 p.m, having not ate lunch and it just been all really stressful. And that's also not the way that I wanted to do things. So it was finding this balance of, working that number of hours, but also not feeling like I'm stuffing everything into those hours and still having some spaciousness in there as well. So I think the first thing that is helpful when it comes to me working that number of hours is the way that I have my business model set up. Now, there's pros and cons here, and I'm going to get into this because, like I say, this is just a very honest, truthful look at how this works for me. But right now, my business model consists of, and when I talk about business model, it's simply the products and services that I have that enable me to make money and how they're priced. And it's like that very basic kind of understanding of a business model. But basically, I have a range of one-to-one / kind of done for you offers. I would not even call them high ticket these days. I would call them kind of mid-priced for what they are, which again might be something that I need to look at some point, but I wouldn't call them high ticket. Certainly not looking at other business coaches and what other business mentors charge. But I have those services, and then I have some other services. I have my group program, Wholehearted Business. I have my little membership, Content Marketing for Coaches Club. I have various live programs, courses and things like that, which are all various extents of passiveness, if you like. To be honest, I've kind of lent more into things that are a bit more high touch recently, which again has pros and cons when you don't want to work as much. But I also have some passive things, and this mix kind of makes it work. So looking at my business model is really interesting. And like I say, I think where I've got it right now, if all of my income was just through one-to-one, done for you coaching stuff, then I think that would restrict me a little bit, because obviously I've only got so many hours in the day that I can work in. So I do have some of those passive elements which are helpful, and there's no difference in terms of the marketing that I do for either of those things, really. It all kind of comes into the same place. So I feel like the business model is something that helps, but again, also potentially hinders the income growth that I've got in the business. But right now, I've always kind of been pretty content, to be honest. I get to work 20 hours a week. I get to have time off with my kids. I'm making a really good for me and good for where I live income level that gives us what we need. I'm definitely ready to grow right now, but I have been happy at that level. And I think, again, what I'm kind of sharing this for is your business model combined with the number of hours that you've got. And a lot of business coaches, they talk about like, well, the kind of talk as if you can make any amount of money that you could potentially ever want in your life, regardless of how many hours that you work. And that's absolute bollocks. It's just total bullshit. There is a link between how many hours you work and how much money you make. Like, there is. And a lot of the people who are obviously making a lot more money working less hours a week usually have very, very high ticket offers that they might not deliver as high touch as I do. And again, it kind of gets it for me as a business coach and mentor. It's really interesting because it kind of gets me into this space where I'm not comparing myself to those, but I am thinking, well, I could, charge 10k for a package of coaching and mentoring with me. And if I sold those, then I could then say that I was a 6-figure business owner, which would then leverage the amount of people who want to pay that amount of money. And this is where it all gets a bit nuts in the coaching industry, guys, to be honest. So it's an interesting thing to look at. And obviously some people have got really leveraged passive methods of making their business work, and that works really well. They've got big teams as well, or they've even got small teams. So lots of people's business models look different, and that's not a good bad thing. It's a them thing. And where I am right now for me and my business is I'm looking at my business model for my lifestyle, for my income levels that I want, and looking at what can I do differently to change what this mix of things looks like. And again, I feel like it's a bit of a myth that you can all just click your fingers and suddenly shift something in your business and be making like double your income, still working the same number of hours. It's more complex than that. And I do think there is a correlation between how many hours you work and how much income your business makes. There's also the big question of how much you invest and what your profit margin is as well. Because if you've got plenty of money there to invest, perhaps if you have access to resources that other people don't have, that you can invest in a team and hiring out, in copywriters, in ads, then again, that changes what it looks like. And I just share this because, again, it's not the people who do that are bad or that I'm bad because I don't do that. It is just different. I think it's really helpful to look at that, because for a long time I felt like I was failing because I wasn't doing that, when actually it's basically just like, this is my business model. That was what I was happy doing at the time. I didn't have the access to resources to invest in massive amounts of paid ads, or to have the risk of investing as well is another big thing. All of these things come into play. So from my perspective, and again, this is really just from my perspective, it was really helpful to understand that, and that actually I'm not failing because I don't have that. It's just that I don't have that yet, or for whatever reasons, I might not want to have that. And it's just that their businesses look different to mine. So it's been really, really helpful to understand that and not feel like, I'm rubbish because I'm working 20 hours a week and not making £1 million a year. It really helped me understand that everyone's business is different, everyone's business model is different, everyone's starting point is different. What people want, how they want the businesses to look and feel is different, and that's okay. So alongside the kind of general business model, and like I say, the business model that I've got set up right now, what it's resulting in is I put in this amount of hours a week and it gives me that amount of income roughly every year, and that's fine. And alongside that, I do have some things in place that I feel help me get done what I need to get done in that amount of time. So the first thing is that I have client-free days. Now, I did an episode of the show on this. I will link to it. And this has been so helpful for me because, again, it comes back to that spaciousness. I need days when I just don't have meetings and things in because I need expanses of time to get stuff done. So I have Mondays and Thursdays as client-free days. I have Tuesdays and Wednesdays when I see clients, when I have group calls, when I do stuff with other people. I have those days, and that works really beautifully well for me. It's a really nice mixture. And like I say, I have Fridays, which kind of like sometimes I dip into, sometimes I don't. It really just depends on how I feel, what I've got going on at the time. But that is a really lovely balance for me. And again, it kind of, I suppose in some ways there is a potential restriction there because, if I did decide to see more clients and work more days, then I potentially could make more income, but I'd also not enjoy my business as much. So again, that's always been like the kind of like factor in there in terms of how I run things. But it also means that I do have those days when I can just get stuff done and be in my kind of zone and feel really good. And also it means that I've got days if I just need to rest and not do anything, I've got those days as well. Something else that I've been finding even more helpful lately is planning in mini seasons. Again, I've talked about this I think in various different episodes of the show. I started doing this last year and it really has made a massive difference for me in my business and in my life really. And this is basically where I, instead of planning by month or by quarter, I actually kind of plan around the school terms, which again kind of comes really into the reasons why I run my business in this way anyways, because of the kids. So I tend to plan out what I'm going to do between the school holidays. So that tends to be kind of like a 6 to 8 week period of time. And it aligns quite nicely with like the wheel of the year, which I really like. So it helps me embed into the seasons a little bit more, which feels really good to me as well. So that's really helpful. I find that a month is just not long enough and a quarter is just a bit too long. So this is like a happy medium. And I feel like it helps me move things forward in my business and focus in the way that I need to, just based on that time frame. And it just helps me be more achievable in terms of like planning what I'm going to do. I tend to have a better sense of what I can do in that time. It's just clicked in my brain, something basically. It really has just clicked in my brain. I just find it really, really helpful in terms of like my productivity and getting stuff done and being realistic with what I can do. It's just been helpful to work through things in that way. And what I've also found helpful is I kind of connect the dots between everything. So I have my annual plan, I have these mini seasons, and then every week I have my planning document, like my Notion dashboard, and I pull out the tasks from the mini season plan that I want to work on that week. And again, that's really helpful in terms of I'm not wasting a lot of time faffing around wondering what I should be doing, because I've got a plan and it's a very clear plan and I know what I need to be working on any given week, and that really helps move things forward and get stuff done. Another thing that I feel personally helps me, make this work in 20 hours a week is not doing a lot on social media. I think there's a few different reasons for this. I think, first of all, I do use social media, just to say I just don't use it heavily. I have like a low social media approach in my business. The main thing that I use is Instagram stories, and I have a Facebook group as well, and those are the main things that I use. But I feel like I could very easily get sucked in to spending a lot of time creating content on social media that wouldn't actually get me a lot back out. And also, I think I would end up getting sucked in and scrolling a lot and just using social media a lot. So I feel like that's another little thing, like almost unexpected thing that really helps me, is that I get to do what I need to do in the 20 hours because I'm not having to spend ages like faffing. I do, however, spend a lot of time creating my non-social media based content, like these episodes of the show. So these do actually take quite a bit of time to create. When you look at how much time I have available across the week, these do take a good chunk. And it is something I have asked myself, like, is the outcomes that I'm getting, is the results that I'm getting from creating these shows worthwhile in terms of the number of people who are finding me, my email list growth, the number of clients who are finding me through the show? And I feel that it is. It is always one of those things that I'm trying to look at and be really honest with myself. I think where the space there is definitely in further optimizing what I'm already doing. So I feel like I've spoken about this before, but I like to take a layering approach to strategy, because if I started this show thinking, right, I need to have every single optimization in place, everything needs to be SEO'd and everything needs to be doing this, and this, I would have just not started. And there is definitely further optimizations that I want to make in terms of like YouTube and, things I want to do with the podcast to help things grow. So there's definitely a lot of space for that. So, this show probably takes me, I would say, from start to finish, each episode's probably about 2 or 3 hours, I think, for each episode. And that includes writing the blog post, recording, editing, and all of that stuff. And again, there's probably some things I can outsource, which I'm going to get onto in a second. But, having this show, it fulfills so much, and it does all of my marketing is basically kind of done through this show. So although it is a big chunk of time each week, it is also the fact that like a lot of stuff is getting done in that, because there's not a lot of stuff outside of that apart from emailing my list really, and perhaps playing with some ads, which is something I've started doing recently. So again, that's another thing that I feel helps me get a lot done and get a lot out there in 20 hours a week. Something else that really helps is having a VA. I spoke about hiring a VA and working with a VA on an episode of the show recently. You can check that out. I'll put a link. And that really, really helps, having someone in my little team who I can outsource certain tasks to. Obviously, it does just give me more time back, and it makes those 20 hours much more effective, so that I'm not doing stuff that basically someone else can do for me. So Jem works about, I think it's 5 hours a month. She gets a lot done in those 5 hours. She's like shit-hearted doing stuff. And I don't really at this point need any more, probably because I'm a bit precious about what I do give away. I like holding on to what I've got, but that's again something that I'm looking at in terms of what I can do better. So those are just some of the systems and strategies and processes and things that I've got in place that I feel help me get where I'm at in 20 hours a week. There's also like a bunch of lifestyle things that I want to talk about that I really think help me. And also it's kind of like a two-way street, because I feel like I benefit from just doing the 20 hours, but also the things that I need to do to make sure that when I am doing it, I am focused while still enjoying a bit of spaciousness as well. So I think the key thing for me is I make sure that I get enough sleep. Like I'm not working until 11, 12 a.m. in the morning. I'm really focusing on my sleep, trying to just make sure that I get as much as I can. I co-slept with 2 small children, and at one point I was just getting no sleep, and I know how horrible that is and what a really unpleasant impact that makes basically. In fact, I recently got gifted, which was really amazing, a Simba mattress, which has just been such a game changer. And it's just things like that, like investing in things for your sleep. Like when you're in your 20s, you could like sleep on a a park bench and be absolutely fine. And in your 40s, it's like you have to have a full routine. So it's like I've got my lovely mattress, I've got my sleep stories that I listen to as I fall asleep, I take my magnesium, all that kind of stuff. I really invest in making sure that I get a good night's sleep. So that's really, really important, because without that, I just can't get anything done. I just can't function. So it doesn't matter how many hours you work. If you just can't function, you can't function. So sleep's really, really important. Also, like just trying to eat well. I've talked a bit about my whole well-being journey that I've been on anyway in some of the behind the scenes episodes of the show, but I try and just make sure that I have access to easy, healthy lunches and snacks. Like that's particularly for while I'm working. I do want to take lunch breaks. I don't want to have to just work through my lunch, and I don't want to just find that I'm so hungry at the end of the day that I'm just eating something that's there for the sake of it. So I try and have healthy lunches planned and access to healthier snacks so that I can keep myself going when I'm, and like I say, I'm talking like a 6-hour day with a break. It's not a long day, but I just want to make sure that I'm still looking after myself basically, because that's the foundation of everything, isn't it? And then when it comes to exercise as well, again, another thing that's really important to me, I kind of go between two things. I either get up really early, again, as long as I'm getting enough sleep. I might get up at 5 o'clock and go to the gym really early and get that out the way at the start of the day. I really like doing that if I can. Otherwise, I will go during the day, and I will go during my quote unquote work time. And that's actually fine. Like, and this is where I'm kind of saying, like, sometimes it's a lot less than 20 hours a week that I work. Sometimes it's a lot more. Like, often I will use some of that time to go and get a coffee with a friend, to go to the gym during the day if that's a bit less busy and if I haven't had a good night's sleep. I will do that. And yes, it's not work time, but it's still really, really important. And it still means that I feel that over the whole year, months, etc., I get more done overall because I'm taking care of myself. I'm making sure that I'm happy, healthy, I'm doing things that I enjoy, and it all kind of evens out. And again, I think there's this really lovely, relationship between the business and my lifestyle and what I want my life to look like. And, I get to work 20 hours a week and get to be focused and do the right things in that time that help my business do its thing. And because I'm working so little in comparison, to like a full-time job, it also means I have the time to invest in those things too. So it works out really wonderfully like that. And what I have kind of learned over the years, as a 41-year-old mum to 2 children, and also just someone existing in this world in 2024, because let's face it, like the last few years have been nuts, is that I need to have structure, but I really need to be flexible with that. This is one of the things that I find difficult, going with the flow and having a structure, but allowing that to bend and flow with whatever is going on with my life at the time. And that I honestly find tricky. And sometimes I do have to really catch myself and remind myself, like, it's okay to just go with the flow. Nothing's going to break. Nothing's going to be destroyed. Everything's going to be okay. Sometimes, the kids are poorly, or I might have a PTA thing that I need to go to, or, this might happen, and it's fine. Like, just trying to be flexible and having that flexible attitude is really helpful. I do struggle with it, but it is really, really helpful, again, with managing to do those kind of roughly 20 hours a week and working in that smaller chunk of time. That really, really makes a massive difference. Is just reminding myself to be flexible, to be creative as well. Like, that's a big core desired feeling for me. It's like one of my authentic code things is creativity. And actually, when I try and tune into that in terms of, yes, this week might not be going the way that I want it to be, but how can I be creative with my time? How can I be creative with my mindset? How can I be creative with the work that I need to do? That's really, really helpful as well. And I think something that is probably like it's a bit of a lifestyle thing, but also a bit of a business kind of process systems, is also having boundaries. Again, this is something that I've struggled with definitely in the past, but I try and do it in a way that feels really aligned and really good for me. And that's having boundaries with my clients, with myself, with other people that I might be working with, that help me get the most out of myself and help them get the most out of me as well. So in terms of when I'm available, when I'm checking apps, when I'm responding to things, like that again really helps to keep me focused in those 20 hours a week. And like I say, I'm not perfect, not by a long shot. And just to say as well, certainly not in terms of I'm not working every single, Monday to Thursday. Some days I have bad days and I just don't do anything. Recently I just had a bad day and I was like, I had to message one of my clients and say, can we reschedule? Because I was not in the form that I wanted to be to work with that client and give her the best experience for the money that she's invested in me. And that's okay as well. So it's this kind of whole mix of things. But I think boundaries is quite an interesting one, because without that, I think it does get really hard to get done what needs to get done in less time. We need to have boundaries, not just with other people, but with ourselves as well. And like I say, I wanted to talk a bit about the reality of working this number of hours. And like I said earlier, when I talked a bit about the business model stuff, I do feel like there is a correlation between how much time you've got available and how much money you've got available and the results that you get in your business. I think that is just the case. And what I'm really recognizing is that I have probably hit the plateau of where the income that I can make, given the business model that I have and the time that I've got available. And one of those needs to change if I am going to make more money in the business and get different results. Something needs to change. Now, do I work more hours, which I don't particularly want to? Do I change my business model, which, I'm quite happy with? I could look at other things like raising my prices, and there are things that I'm working on that I'm changing. Like I really identified, I think it's like 4 key areas that I have traditionally held myself back from a little bit. And I think there is probably an element of investing a little bit more time into some of these things just so that I've got the bandwidth to do that. So it might be that I do start putting maybe an extra 2 hours in a week, but very specifically for my brain to know that I'm working on these areas that I've kind of pulled away from or shied away from in the past. I think that can make a big difference. So for example, the things that have come up for me are paid ads. I know that they're a way to scale your business. I've done them before, but I've just kind of, there can be a bit of a faff, although they're not really that much of a faff. It's more in my brain. So I'm pushing myself to do that. Also collaborations. I have just had a really big thing in terms of feeling like me and my business are not good enough to collaborate with certain people. And that has been a big thing, but I'm working on that. And I'm trying to get more guests on the show for you guys to talk to and things like that as well. So I'm really trying to address that in my brain. Data. So this is another thing that I've heard much bigger business owners than me talk about in terms of looking at the data in their businesses and using that to form decisions and to get better results. I'm just not that detail orientated, but I know it's a growth edge that I want to push into. So I'm going to push into that growth edge. And there's also a whole bunch of mindset stuff, and I have tools to work on mindset, but I've also invested in a program which has an element of that is around helping you with your subconscious blocks. So I'm really excited to be delving into that. So those are some of the things that I'm working on. And like I say, it might be that I do spend a little bit more time each week, really specifically working on those things, because I feel like that's the growth edge for me a little bit. So like I said, that's just the reality, and I feel like it's really helpful to look at that, if you are working a certain number of hours in your business. And like I say, I think just everyone's business is going to be different. Yours is going to be different to mine. I think it really is looking is your business model capable of you doing what you need to do in the hours that you've got and making the amount of money that you want to make? If you've only got a one-to-one coaching offer and it's priced at a certain price point and you can only work with 10 clients at once, does the math even work out? It's these kind of questions that you can ask yourself. Also, another reminder is where you are starting from now is not where you're going to finish or where you ultimately end up. You're going to grow anyway, especially if you're just starting out. So there's always that thing to factor in as well. But yeah, if you are interested in, working less and, starting to shift your business model and starting to have someone to have these conversations with, to really look at your business really fundamentally and see what your growth edges are, where you need to invest more time and more energy to help your business grow without necessarily having to put more hours in, or perhaps it is about finding that little bit of extra time to play with, then definitely get in touch. I have got my one-to-one mentoring program, which is exactly for coaches who are at that stage of business where they're ready to start to expand their businesses out of where they've currently been. And these are all the kind of conversations that we would be having to investigate and explore what you need to shift and change. And like I say again as well, if I was happy with the income level that I was at, I would be quite happy just continuing to just do what I'm doing. But I've made this really conscious decision that I do actually want more now. I'm at that stage now where my little girl's getting a little bit bigger. She's going to be starting school. I feel like now is the time for me to start really looking at this. But I still probably don't really want to work that many more hours because I really like, again, how it supports my lifestyle and how my lifestyle supports the business. So it all kind of comes together. But I really hope that that's been useful, everybody. Please let me know how you get on with it. Like I said, do get in touch if you want to explore how you can work with me one-to-one. You know, I absolutely love supporting people around all this kind of thing. There's so many things that we can do and tweak. And like I say, I'm really living this at the moment. I feel like I'm walking my talk very much at the moment with this. So do get in touch. And yeah, if you've enjoyed this, please leave me a comment below, give me a thumbs up, give me a like, pop me a message on Instagram. I'm at Wholeheartedly Laura. I am on Instagram for DMs and for stories. So do get in touch. Let me know if this has been helpful, if it's sparked any thoughts for you. Let me know, and I will see you next time, guys. Take care. Bye.